Sunday in the message, Brother Kennan brought to mind some things that made me think of miracles. And miracles is something that's can be different to anyone. In Bible study, we look at all the miracles of the Old Testament and New Testament, and we talk about those. And sometimes it seems maybe a little much beyond a belief. And yet, other things, I think we're much more at ease in taking to heart and just saying, well, that's the way it was. But I shared with Brother Kennan, there were 2 times in my own life that I feel like I experienced a miracle. In the spring of '96, Gail was pregnant. We were expecting a child in the end of April. And in end of February, Gail got sick. It was kind of a flu-like thing, but because she was pregnant and undergoing blood tests and everything on a regular basis, some things went off the charts with her blood counts and stuff. And it was determined that she had CMV, or cytomegalovirus, which in the 90s it was running rampant in schoolyards and every daycare. Every child had it. It was really nothing but a minor cold for children in almost all cases. Even in adults, it was kind of like the flu, and unless you went and had blood work done, you'd never know it was something different. However, if you were in a situation where you were having blood counts, it really skewed the counts. Other than being a flu for adults, it really wasn't that big a deal. But it had been determined that for pregnant women, it was a very big deal. At the time, in the mid-90s, it was thought, when it was first came out, thought that it was one of the highest causes of stillbirths, of brain defects, mental defects. It caused calcification in the brain, all types of birth defects. It was really scary for a pregnant woman to have this. We were worried to death, of course. She started going to the doctor every other week instead of, once a month. And they followed it on out. It seemed like everything was okay, but we were just on pins and needles all the way up to the birth. When the baby was born, I remember counting the fingers and toes and making sure everything was perfect, and she was. And that was Grace. The name itself, I think, implies our thoughts. When she was 2 weeks old, she woke up one morning crying, and we'd really never heard her cry before. It was unusual. And it was a Friday, and Gail felt like, well, she'd just take her on into Dr. Hannah and just make sure everything was okay, because she felt like maybe she was running a little fever. And when she got to Dr. Hannah's office, he took the baby and within 30 seconds told Gail to take the baby, go straight to the emergency room, which was down the street. He would meet her there in 5 minutes. As we went through it, it was determined that the child had bacterial meningitis, and it was the soft spot on the head that sinks in. It was puffing out, and from that, he felt like he knew that's probably what it was, and sure enough, the test over the next 24 hours confirmed that it was a meningitis. He said, look, she's going to be fine. He said, she's in the hospital. We have her on antibiotics. She's fine. Y'all have nothing to worry about. You do have to stay here for 10 days, with this, but she's already in the clear. So we were much relieved and spent 8, 9 very boring days there with the baby. The last thing they had to do before she was released was a CAT scan. And that morning, Dr. Hannon came into the room, and he shut the door and he sat down, and he was as white as his lab coat. And he said, I don't know what I'm looking at. He said, this is above my head. I'm going to refer you to the best pediatric neurologist that I know. Said, and I'm going to let her look at this. Said, I don't know what I'm looking at. He said, but there's a possibility this could be something very, very serious. He made an appointment for us to see that person within the next couple of days. We went in, and her name was Dr. Shu. Before she ever spoke to us, she put up on a board the cross cuts of the CAT scan. Just looking at it, what would normally be a brain looked like a half of a shriveled walnut. Half of the brain looked empty. We're like, what is this? She said, let's talk. And she went on to tell us, my first thought was, well, maybe it just hadn't finished growing. And she assured us, no, that was not the case. When we mentioned the CMV, she was like, that explains everything. She said what we were looking at was severe. She examined the baby, which now at this time is 3 to 4 weeks, and she told us, she said, she seems perfectly normal now. She said, but I'm telling you, this is not normal. She's saying, this is severe. She said, y'all need to start making plans now. This is life-changing. She said, and my question, well, what is it going to impact? She said, everything. Very possibly motor skills, almost certainly verbal, any type of mental brain activity. She said, we don't know if it'll just be diminished or if it'll be total. We don't know. She said, but I can assure you, this is life-changing. We left devastated. She gave us some charts of what to look for and told us that we would be coming back to see her every 60 days. So, her being our second, we had one to compare her to. And we're watching like a hawk. Every time she followed something with her eyes, every time she verbally, just made a sound, everything, we're taking notes, and we can't see it. And we went back after that for the 2 months. We went back for the 4 months. Every time we'd go, Dr. Shu would do everything, and she kept emphasizing, get ready. She says, I know we don't see it now, but get ready. It's going. She said, it may not happen until she's ready to speak, when she's ready to walk, but it's going to happen. We went back at 12 months. The child was running around the room. And Dr. Shu looked her over and did some things with her. And at one point, I don't remember what it was Grace did, but Dr. Shu kind of laughed and said, let's sit down. And we sat down, and she said, I don't understand. She said, everything I know from a scientific basis, all the study I've done, indicates this is incredibly bad, serious. But we haven't seen anything yet. So this is a matter of fact, she's so far ahead in everything. She says, I believe with all of my education and understanding that this is going to be a very serious thing for this child's life and impact your whole family tremendously. But right now, I'm wasting your time. She said, I don't understand it. I can't explain it. In a lot of places, the only word that you can use for something like this is a miracle. She said, I still believe you're going to see it at some point. But until you do, take my card, call me when it happens. But until then, y'all just have fun and enjoy your child. We never saw her again. Grace was reading in pre-kindergarten. She was turning flips like a little acrobat at 3 and 4, gymnastics, and of course later softball just became her passion. She had a wonderful career in high school and then in college. Played 4 years at Southeastern with softball. Her senior year, she was an academic All-American. To this day, other than her hard-headedness, we've never found anything that would be abnormal in any way. I remember right after we first saw Dr. Shue the first time, Gail's father told us, he said, never underestimate the power of prayer. Can't explain it. Maybe there's no need to. I have doubts about lots of things, but when it comes home to you in a way like this did, it's a miracle. And that's the only way I could ever be able to describe this. Part of you wants to know if there was another CAT scan, what it would show. But then if you think about that, an even bigger part hopes that you never have any reason to do a CAT scan.